Hi ladies, it's Sherry Fogelman here, and today in this video I want to talk about the link between autoimmune conditions and stress and a couple different ways that you want to or can lower your stress so that you can reduce your symptoms. So number one is if you're watching this and you have an autoimmune condition like lupus, like Sjogren's, lichen sclera, hard to pronounce that one, even MS, even psoriatic arthritis, RA, any of the many autoimmune conditions, stress is a really, really important factor in lowering your symptoms. What is not going to remove your symptoms or completely reverse your symptoms is medication. Now, I never tell people not to take their medication, of course, and I always tell people check with your doctor when you're making any changes, especially when you're listening to any of my tips or my content on advice with autoimmune conditions, because I'm not a doctor and I'm not giving medical advice. However, what I do know about medications is that they will just mask the symptoms. So think about somebody that has 3 or 4 headaches a week and they take Tylenol, they take Advil, they take Motrin. Are they getting to the root cause? No, of the headaches. So the headaches keep coming back. When you have a rash, many of you have rashes if you have an autoimmune condition. You can put creams on, you can take steroids, you can take antibiotics. Your rash will always come back until you get to the root cause. So one of the root causes of autoimmune conditions, or one of the things I should say that exacerbate autoimmune conditions, especially one that involves any kind of irritable bowel or Crohn's or colitis or anything like that, stress is a huge factor. So unless you're dealing with your stress, you are not going to reverse or, go into remission on your autoimmune condition. And let me remind you, I reversed my own autoimmune condition. I've helped many, many women do the same. You can as well. We just need to tackle what are the triggers for you. So if you're watching this and stress and you filled out my gut health assessment, which by the way, below this video, if you click on that, you can fill out my gut health assessment. If you clicked that you have chronic stress or unmanageable stress or stress that is getting in the way of your everyday life, you really want to watch the rest of this video to figure out some ways that you can reduce your stress. So let me just talk about stress a little bit. So stress is a thing that we need, right? When we go into stress mode, it helps us kind of cope. Our cortisol goes up. That's your fight or flight hormone. However, when your fight or flight hormone, cortisol, is constantly elevated, we have a hard time making things happen that are supposed to happen in our body. First of all, your blood sugar also gets elevated because your body needs to be in fight or flight. You need energy. You need to start burning sugar for fuel. So that's our body's natural sort of way of dealing and coping with stress, is to give us more blood sugar. However, high blood sugar is going to mean high insulin. High insulin means you are not going to be losing weight. So we want to keep those cortisol levels at normal ebbs and flows. So cortisol kind of goes up in the morning and it should go down in the evening. Speaking of evening, that's what I want to talk about in this video, is how to reduce your cortisol levels in the evening so you're not having cravings and you're not hungry in the evening and you're sleeping better. So if you're not sleeping well, your cortisol is raised, because if you're not sleeping well, your body thinks that you need to go hunt for food, right? Because that was how it was back in the day. We didn't sleep because we were hunting for food and we weren't feeling safe. We were on alert. On alert is great if you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or some other animal, which that's not our problem, right? These days. We have different problems, but those aren't our problems. So cortisol gets elevated when you don't sleep at night. Here are a couple ways that you can sleep better at night. First of all, you need a bedtime routine. So your bedtime routine should start 45 minutes to an hour before you actually want to fall asleep. Remember the days, for those of you who have kids or little nieces and nephews, you know that there is a bedtime routine, or you may remember from your own childhood, a bedtime routine where you were reading a book, you were taking a bath or a shower, you were winding down. And before we had electronics, turning on, our engines, we're just relaxing and calming down. We also are not designed to be eating late at night. We were designed to be eating sort of at sundown, which is kind of early for, the social beings. I get that. But if you're, over 50 and you're an empty nester, you can probably stop eating around 6 o'clock. I know that sounds very early. If you're a working person, we'd have to talk about customizing that for you and figuring that out. But if you're highly motivated to keep your cortisol down and reverse your symptoms, one of the best ways you can do that is to get a good night's sleep. How do you do that? Again, number one is have a bedtime routine. So about 45 minutes to an hour, you want to start winding down. You want to start turning electronics off. You want to start reading that book. You want to take a bath or a shower. Whatever feels good to you that's relaxing, you definitely want to start doing that. The other thing that you want to do is a good night's sleep actually starts in the morning. So tip number 2 is when you wake up in the morning with the sun, you want to get outside, the first hour or so that you're awake and get some sunlight. Could be on your porch, could be outside, could be walking your dog with no sunglasses. So you're getting that light onto your eyes. What that's going to do is that's actually going to stimulate cortisol in the morning when you want it. And then in the evening, when your cortisol is low, because you're doing the bedtime routine, you will stimulate the hormone melatonin. Melatonin is that hormone that you may be taking a supplement of, which you can. I don't recommend that actually for younger people, but if you're over 50 or 55, we don't make as much melatonin as we used to. So a little bit of supplementing of the right melatonin can be very helpful. But getting up in the morning and getting that sunlight on your eyeballs in the morning with no sunglasses will help you release that melatonin in the evening because that's what you want to do. Another thing for a good night's sleep is not eating 3 to 4 hours before bed. Why? Your heart rate needs to go down to start to fall asleep and to get a good night's sleep. If you're eating a snack, a late night snack, before you go to bed, your engine's turned on and your heart rate goes up in order to digest that food. So you will not get as good a night's sleep if you're eating 3 to 4 hours before bed. Trust me. So those are my top 3 tips on how to get a better night's sleep. Again, if you're interested in your gut health or reversing your autoimmune condition, fill out my gut health assessment. It has all kinds of questions about assessing the health of your gut, which can be very helpful with anyone with an autoimmune condition or inflammation. Thanks, guys.